You're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Shane Darby. Season's greetings one and all, and apologies for the relative silence over the past 2 months or so. Real life got in the way, in addition to some guest scheduling snafus. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome friend of the pod, Richard Pennell, back to the show. Richard joins us to chat about his new book, Common Grounds, which those nice people at Grant Books have just published. In preparing for today's chat, I found myself on the Foundation for Common Land's website and thought it might be interesting to share their introduction to these common spaces. Common land is privately owned land with rights of common over that land. Most commonly degrades animals. First enshrined in law in the Magna Carta in 1215, common land traditionally sustained the poorest people in rural communities who owned no land of their own, providing them with a source of wood, bracken for bedding, and pasture for livestock. Over 1/3 of England's moorland is common land. At one time, nearly half the land in Britain was common land. But from the 16th century onwards, the gentry excluded commoners from the land, which could be improved through agriculture. This is why most common land is now found in areas with low agricultural potential, but areas which hold value for their conservation significance and natural beauty, such as Dartmoor, the Lake District, the Yorkshire Dales, and the Shropshire Hills. Notwithstanding the previous definition, I have been trying to find a description of Richard's book for the purposes of this introduction, and I've settled on the following. Common Grounds is a golfing distillation of the difference between need to have and nice to have. So hopefully we can tease out this theme over the next hour or so with Richard. As with all of his writing, this new book is life-affirming and most certainly sits firmly in the need to have category on your bookshelf. As it's Christmas time, I'm giving away 2 copies of Common Grounds to 2 observant listeners. Richard has provided me with 2 images that he's taken on his travels during 2025. All you need to do to enter the competition is to identify the specific hole and the golf course. I will post the pictures up on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, and entries can be made by leaving a message underneath the posts. There are 2 distinct prizes up for grabs, and the same entrant cannot win twice. The closing date for entries is the 7th of January 2026. Winner details will be posted online soon after the closing date and will be selected based on a random number generator. For those of you not lucky enough to win one of the prizes, I will put a link in the show notes to Richard's online shop, where a limited stock of Common Grounds can be purchased. All that's left to say is Happy Christmas to you all. Many thanks for continuing to tune in to the Firm and Fast show over the course of 2025, and I really do hope that you enjoy this chat with Mr. Pennell. So mission control here, Richard. I'd just like you to carry out a few checks before we start the ignition sequence. Wi-Fi and power check on your end.
Yep. Plugged in, working, Wi-Fi good.
Okay. Is this take 4 or take 5?
It's 5 at least.
Okay. Well, you know what?
In the 3rd location.
At least you're out of that bloody cupboard.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, let's do it.
Okay.
Richard Pennell, you're very welcome once again to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. Season's greetings. How is all at West Byfleet?
Yeah, all good. Thank you, Shane. Merry Christmas to you too. Yeah, all good. West Byfleet in fabulous condition, I have to say. Played it twice last week and it's just wonderful. So that makes for a happy membership and a good year we've had. So.
Busy time for you, I'd say.
Yeah, it should be getting quieter, but it's not. It's a funny place. It's always busy, and
it's a funny old place.
Yeah, funny old place. It is. It's great, and outside of work is busy and selling books and stuff. So yeah, but all good, all going in the right direction.
Hold your wish for a second. We'll get on to the books in a minute.
All right. Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
look, I know that's the main reason we're talking today, but come on, we got to do the tease first of all. So I was reading your Pitchmarks missive this morning. So I know you're on a busman's holiday of sorts with your GCMA mates. So golf at Warbleston, followed by lunch in the dining room at Woking, under the gaze of the great Bernardo, who I believe held the presidency of the GCMA for a wee while.
That's right. Yeah, Bernardo, he was the first president, and then he came back to the role later on in life. And I'm not quite sure why, but he just loved golf, and he loved golf clubs, and I think understood how integral decent staff are to clubs. So, yeah, it was lovely to be back at Woking and under his sort of very kind gaze across the dining room as there was snowballs flying left, right and centre. And it was lovely. 2/3 of the 3Ws when was that, Monday? And then I'm playing at West Hill tomorrow just to close the loop on that. So,
well, I hope you have a lovely time. And it's funny, I think much like your piece today, Bernardo often wondered how or why, in fact, people would go down the golf secretarial route.
Alistair Cook was always on about they've been playing golf for 800 years and no one's quite worked out why, or something along those lines. I think you could say the same as the secretaries, and I think we look at each other some days and think, what are we doing? But by and large, we're in the game, we're part of the game, and it's fun, so don't regret it.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's been a while since we last convened in person over, I believe, Sideways Rain at Camber Sands, and indeed again at Shirley Church Road a few days later. You have been threatening to put those clubs away. However, I do get an inkling that a few range sessions with your son Henry may have rekindled a desire, and I'm going to say this word very quietly, improve. Did you put the clubs away for the autumn, or are you still chasing mastery and sidestepping the frost warnings of wintry dawn patrols?
Long way away from mastery. No, I didn't. I haven't put them away. I was golfed out when I last saw you and sort of in need of a break. The break didn't arise, actually. I didn't book anything.
Surprise.
Things cropped up. Yeah, exactly. Things cropped up. So I've had a good autumn in terms of playing. I have got the bit between my teeth a little bit to improve for next year. And I'm not going to give too much away because I'll probably fall flat on my face in these efforts. But I've sort of got the urge back to practice a bit and improve and get a hole in one.
Are you feeling all right?
Well, I do this every December and sort of lasts until about the 3rd of January. But it's going to be different next year, Shane.
It's always going to be different, Richard. That hole in one is just within touching distance. We will get onto that, though.
Oh, look forward to that.
We're here, of course, to chat about your new book, Common Grounds, recently published by Don and those wonderful people at Grant Books. You might first give us a sense of how this fits alongside your first book, Grassroots, which I believe is temporarily out of print. So what was the genesis for the new book, and how did that initial kernel evolve into the book as it now appears?
It's been a journey. So I love Grassroots, and they were my sort of favourite essays that I'd written at that point. But a mixed bag in theme and location and so on, and the type of place. And just this really gorgeous sort of pattern emerged of people coming back and talking about the lesser known places in there. So Borth and Innislas, it's not on most people's radar. Fabulous links course right on the Welsh coast there, near Abu Dhabi, just wonderful place. And particularly Cleve Hill, I have to say, the number of people I've met who've since been to Cleve, and also Minchold and Painswick, which were the 3 Cotswolds courses in Grassroots. That's just been such a joy to hear their feedback. We all have certain highly rated, if you like, courses in our wish list, and that's only natural. I love those too, and I've been lucky enough to do loads of those. But the rustic ones just got under my skin, and I was interested that they got under other people's skins a bit. So that was the initial thing. I thought common ground courses perhaps is the thread. It evolved beyond that. So they're not all common land or grazed golf courses. I went and asked about a dozen friends of suggestion of places. So I think there are 27 courses in common grounds, and I must have another 50 that I haven't picked up along the way, and I'll go back and revisit them, at some point, but I had to draw the line somewhere. So it's a rambling journey around some of the more rustic outposts of the game, and I just love that. It feels like Scottish golf would have been a long time ago and still is in places. It's heartwarming.
Well, having only played a subset of the featured courses, I'm going to endeavour over the course of our conversation here to steer you towards, or me really, towards familiar territory. Failing that, we will at least try to aim for intrigue, further information, and perhaps a modicum of history. But don't let this initial framing stand in the way of you scurrying down any particular rabbit hole that you might wish to explore.
Yeah. No, I'm very good at rabbit holes, and my memory might mean that's the only option available, but we'll give it a go.
Well, any port in the storm, hey? Listen, our first port of call this afternoon has to be the majestic, or it's actually this evening at this stage, isn't it? We've had so many attempts to try and do this, but that's a different story altogether. So our first port of call has to be the majestic Cleeve Hill, where our mutual friend and keeper of the hills, Simon Pope, has been ensconced for the past few years. As a complete aside, I do understand that the lure of the Highlands, and Golspie in particular, has proved too much for Simon and his better half to ignore. Simon has agreed, I believe, to become Golspie's very first general manager.
Yeah, it's just wonderful news that came out recently, and Simon and his wife Jo have been sort of hankering after the Highlands for a while. He's done a fabulous job at Cleeve, and I didn't know him. He's a dear friend, but I didn't know him before that. It was Grassroots and the Cleeve chapter in there that got us having a coffee together, and then the three of us played, and it's just a friendship that means a lot to me. And he just gets golf. I think it's fantastic news for Golspie. I went up there and played it just a couple of months ago with him, and was just blown away by the golf course and the town and the people. It's just one of those very, very special things that sort of goes under the radar a bit. It probably would have been the middle of this book if I'd seen it 12 months earlier.
Well, none other than Ran Morissette recently endorsed Golspie's decision to engage in Mr. Pope's services, noting that this is a huge win for Golspie, and I can't wait to finally see it this spring. Everyone raves about the course, exciting times. Congrats to both the club and to Simon. So I'd like to echo Ran's words in wishing Simon and Jo, and Simon particularly, I don't know Jo, but Simon's an all-round good egg, and wishing him all the best for the new role as it develops. So listen, apologies about that short detour. So we get back to Cleeve Hill. For the uninitiated, you might provide us with some thoughts on why Cleeve Hill Golf Course, set up high in the Cotswolds, features in the book, and indeed why it should be on listeners' radar for 2026, for a repeat play or perhaps for a first-time play.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a freak of nature, Cleeve. It's sort of pure links turf on the top of this mountain overlooking Cheltenham, and you can see the Severn Bridge, and you can see the sort of Black Mountains in the distance, and it's just a perch above normal life, really. The wind's whistling through there. You've just got this one iconic tree that you sort of play past, and the architecture's brilliant, and it's done on a shoestring. Simon's they've now doubled their workforce on the golf course in his time now, so they've got two people. So it's done the right way. It presents beautifully. It's firm and fast. I mean, they had an incredibly firm early part of the summer because it was dry over here, but the turf's strong, and the golf course is just fabulous. It keeps getting better, and it's a really welcoming place to go. I can't say enough about it. It's actually not in common ground, but that was only because I made a rule for myself that I couldn't repeat any books from Grassroots. So Cleve has sort of been one of the key triggers to this whole project, and I'm just thrilled on the odd occasion I take people there that they feel the same way about it, and other people feedback that when they go without me, and I just love it. So it's been such a privilege to watch it develop in the right way, and I'm sure Golspie will do the same.
So I understand that our mutual friends at McDonald and Cooper have been engaged to develop a master plan to further augment Cleve. Do you know much about that, or what's in the works?
Little bit. I haven't really got involved in it, but I know there's a couple of bits to the starter. I quite like the start of the course, but there's no question it sort of ramps up from the fourth onwards. So I think they have a plan to tweak the opening little stretch, and having just peered at it in very early stages, I think it makes sense. It's a precious thing though. It's a delicate act improving it, but they've got good people there doing that. So I think it will just continue to evolve.
Well, I guess thank you for putting me on to Cleve, and Simon was a very gracious host when I made it there. I think it was last year at some point. But it features like forts and escarpments and ancient quarries and views over 5 counties. And I didn't get the livestock experience, actually. The cows and the sheep were off the hill when I was there. I believe you did a one club challenge around there, you mad fecker.
Yeah, I've played it a few times with one club. Simon doesn't tend to get there when I go until, after the school run. So he's sort of there at 9 and I'm waking up at 5 up here. So I get there and sprint around. But a friend of ours, a member there at Cleve, Alex, set up this, the Old Tom One, he calls it. It's part of the Cleve Festival, and you choose one club and go round it. The scores, Simon and I sort of tagged along and played first in that this year, but we weren't competitive at all. But some of the people Alex has got there, proper golfers going around with a 5-iron in the 70s, it's just, it's loads of fun. I love that sort of thing. It just anything that can refresh the game. It's a tough golf course with a full set of clubs, so you can imagine what it's like with my game and a 6-iron, but fun, still playable. I've done it with an old mashie, which probably a little bit delicate for a pounding like that. I've done it with a bladed 6-iron. Just it's basically the nearest weapon, Shane. I'll just grab the nearest weapon and get going, and you get round in an hour and a half. It's brilliant, and the coffee's good.
The coffee is great, actually, and the terrace is lovely. And that view, well, I mean, there's a load of views, but that view from the 18th, just back down towards the clubhouse, is just exceptional.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. So I urge people to go there immediately.
It must be mentioned, it did have the hand of old Tom Morris and Alistair Mackenzie at some point to touch it, but if that wasn't enough, I do understand from Mr. McDonald that some recently unearthed historical research suggests that Euro made Tom Simpson's fair hands work at some point as well. Now, the information is a bit sketchy. However, it does come from 2 trusted sources who have knowledge of the primary research materials. I suspect that revelation may not surprise you.
Well, he got around, didn't he, Simpson? He didn't seem to have an enormous amount to his name, but he got around. He knew what he was doing, so it doesn't surprise me. And Cleve was a fated golf course in those days. So, Simon's hit a gold mine. Someone wandered in, delightful chap called Adrian, and he has all sorts of historical stuff. He was a member there in, I think, 62 for a long time, and just has seen Cleve through such a wedge of its interesting and illustrious history. And he shared a whole load of maps and stuff. And that, I think that's where this discovery that Simpson had poked his nose into it came from. It's wonderful.
You know more about it than I do.
Well, I don't know much, but there we are.
Anyway, we go back to Simon again. He's a recurring theme, it would appear, certainly at this junction, the chat. He was, as you mentioned, one time the general manager at Minchin Hampton, which unsurprisingly also features in your Common Grounds book. Our mutual friend, Mr. Thomas, often suggests that I need to make it my business to travel to Gloucestershire to experience this bunkerless remnant from the late 1880s, characterised, I believe, by rolling grassland, humps and hollows. What is the allure of Minch Old, pray tell?
Oh, Minch Old is wonderful. So I had this rule that I couldn't repeat a grassroots golf course in common grounds.
Going well?
Well, I cheated. So the prologue is Minch Old, but it's the Old Man's Nine, which is a sort of course within a course that they used to play. But it's just, I think the point is, because it's where it is and it's common land, it's used by various stakeholders. No one's managed to, when I use any choice language on your podcast, they haven't managed to mess it up. Let's put it that way.
Go on, as Mike Clayton would say, fuck it up. That's what you really mean.
Yeah, he's good at that. It sounds good coming off him. They don't have much water. They're not allowed to, I don't think, put much in the way of nutrients on, and you just end up with like really strong turf that can make it through the dry spells. And the rough is often grazed through the main growing season. They've got cows up there wandering all over the place, including right in front of where you're trying to hit the ball. And it's just basic golf, but just really good. It's just got a lovely feel to it. No airs and graces. And people who've been playing there a very long time are good golfers, and they've had events there for years and years and years. And it's just a wonderful thing. Again, the fact that it's perched a bit like Cleve up the top of a hill just does it all the favours, because the wind dries it out and challenges your golf, and it's just marvellous. There's a few places in this book where if you said you've only got one golf course to play, I would choose one of those. It could be any one of about 20, I think, but Minch Old, and even just the 9-hole loop it's a magical spot. I love it.
So if memory serves, because of probably your rule, Painswick didn't feature in the book. However, I do understand that the full common ground immersion experience in Gloucestershire is not completed until Painswick has been negotiated also.
Yeah, Painswick's crazy. It was one of my favourite ones from the first book. I met a dear friend there to play one of our regular matches, and we stood on the first tee. I'd played it before, and I just watched him look around and look up this, ridiculous. It's like a ski slope, basically, and you can't see the green. There's a massive hill that you have to hit driver up, and then there's these two hollows, and the pin's out of sight. It's just a mad start, and the golf course doesn't really get any more sensible from then on. They make the most of an amazing bit of land, and it's sort of tight in places and quirky, but just, again, lovely. Different, but lovely.
Well, we're going to whisk you off to the Highlands now for a visit with the Coos at Brora. Now, I've not played Brora, however, I have had the pleasure of somewhere like Royal Curragh. Now, as a complete aside, that's somewhere I think you would really enjoy, which is arguably Ireland's oldest formal golf club, dating back to 1857. It is common land on the plains of the Curragh of Kildare, where the British Army garrison and training centre for the Crimean War was located, no less, and until quite recently was ruminated over by the local sheep population. Your first jaunt around Brora, I believe, left you so smitten that you cancelled a tea time at Royal Dornoch in favour of another spin around Brora. It must be pointed out that at that point you had yet to experience Dornoch, so Brora must have been pretty good, given that decision.
It was mind-bending, Brora. So we woke up, we stayed in rooms in the golf hotel, the Royal Golf Hotel, right on the Dornoch's first tee, November 23, and just woke up to a blanket frost. It was rock hard. I went walking out first thing. There was no way they were going to open, and actually they didn't open all day. And they kindly rearranged us for the Monday morning, which was fine. We were still up there, but we phoned Brora, where we'd been planning to play Monday, to say, look, are you likely to open? They sort of an intake of air from the chap in the pro shop like this, and I think we'll be able to get you out. And we turned up there, and it's the most glorious day. By the time we got there, it took us an hour to get organised and drive up. The sun had come in. I think they get the frost a little bit less at Brora than Dornoch, so it was playable. And there were two people out there who I later worked out were Rob and Ali McGirt from Prince's, but they were at the far end, so we sort of saw them in the distance and thought, how have we got this amazing golf course with just four of us on it? So we whipped around there, went home, drove home. I remember driving home from Brora, just speechless, really. Didn't know what to say, just fell for the play. The golf course is terrific, but there was just something about that bit of land tucked in there on the coast, and golf course, just fabulous links turf, and just very very aesthetically pleasing the way it's laid out, and the bunker is just kind of just rustic enough. And I knew going up there that we were going to be in for a treat playing Brora, because I know a few people who have joined there as members, having seen it once, and they just absolutely love it, including Jamie, the secretary at Rye. He was you have to go to Brora. And he also pointed us, importantly, to Durness, which we'd seen 2 days earlier. So, yeah, so we went back to the restaurant and the hotel, and was sort of like, I kind of want to still go back to Brora on Monday. So we went back and we played twice. And the second loop, we were in a little bit of danger of missing our flight, but it seemed, the risk seemed worth it. So I think we went round in, I don't know, something like 2:20 the first time, had a Kit Kat in the shop, and then 2:10 the second time. And what's lovely, when you get there, you'll see it's got this sucker punch of an 18th where you hit your 3-wood and you've got about a 5-yard tolerance to stay on the green. It's a brilliant finishing hole, and terrifying for me because there's like property outright and so on. I didn't hit any properties, but I also didn't make par the 3 times we played it in 24 hours. So I thought that's enough of a hook for this place that I want to go back there again and again and again.
So there was recent talk of the cows disappearing off the golf course. However, I understand the crofters that have access to the course for grazing rights have, it appears, rebuffed the club's initial attempts to buy out their access rights.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I try not to get, it's none of my business what they do with the golf course, but I just thought the sheep were part of the experience, actually, and just wonderful, and didn't sort of get in the way. There's a few up there, same at Durness. I mean, there's certain points in the course where there's hundreds of sheep, you couldn't possibly count them, but it's sort of, I love that. Coexisting with local communities and commoners' rights and all that stuff coming together is special, but up to them. We'll see. I'll keep an eye on it from a distance. It's not going to spoil the golf course, let's put it that way.
Sounds like you'd be going back.
Yeah, in a flash.
From the wilds of the Scottish Highlands, I now want to whisk you across to the wild Atlantic Way and the delights of Achill, Mulranny, Carn, Critch Island, and the Coast Guard's 9 at Rosapenna. So you've been to some remote locations. How would you compare the wild Atlantic Way to some of those far-off Scottish isles and outposts that you have investigated recently?
Yeah, I thought you might ask about this, and I've been mulling it over. Yeah, I've not seen all of Scotland, and there's a lot there, but I've seen quite a bit now as a notable Irish stuff. And it just feels like it's just slightly wilder terrain, some of these places. And obviously, Carn is right at the top of that. The dunescape there is crazy. They're vast dunes, and they have the courage to route the golf course through, and in some cases over that stuff. It's just absolutely thrilling. I've got a real soft spot for Ireland. We talked about this before, but I think the ones I've seen are they have a lot in common, but it's slightly wilder land, I think. I think some of the Scottish places, particularly in this book, are subtler pieces of land. That wilder land, there's something about the Atlantic as well. I just love the power of the ocean and its the effect that has on the local climate. It can change in an instant over there, and it does. And you've got to be ready.
Yeah, I recall going up to not maybe as far. Well, actually, we did get to Cairn on that trip. I brought a mate of mine up in that general direction the year before last, and we went up in April and packed for all eventualities. The one thing we didn't pack for was what we got, which was flat calm, 17, 18 degrees in the middle of April. And we were bemoaning the fact that we didn't have a pair of shorts between us while sitting on the terrace at the back of the clubhouse in Cairn. So you can get anything at any time of year. But I guess the moral of the story is pack for all eventualities and you'll be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had one day at Cairn where it was just blistering. The forecast was terrible and the actuality was twice as bad. It was just battering. We were in a breakfast hall just looking at each other going, we've sort of come quite a long way for this. So that was the day we escaped. I tried to drive to Mulranny and missed the turning. And then we were going to go and have a look at Achill anyway. So I got to Achill having accepted that we'd missed Mulranny. Missed Achill because it's not a golf course. It's just a piece of grass. So we drove past it and then checked the map and drove back past looking in and then spotted a flag. It's just absolutely flat. The opposite of Cairn.
Did you get lost heading down there, or just got a little turned around, or
just missed the turning? So on the way back we got into Mulranny. I'm so glad we did because it was fabulous. And actually that was Di Thomas. That was one of his 30 odd recommendations for this book. Was that one? He said it's not too far from Cairn. I thought, now Cairn is another of Jamie's clubs, so I wonder if we could make that one. Achill Island was just as basic as it gets, and we got absolutely drenched. But it's just, Irish golf is so much fun. You never stop smiling. And then Mulranny was a bit more golfy. It's a super golf course, 9 holes, just wonderful greens, fairly menacing fences around the greens. You've got to be very careful stepping over there. But they have little gates as well, and then they have these storm shelters seemingly about every 5 yards. But while we were there, the heavens opened and we understood why they have them, because you get soaked in 12 seconds at Mulranny. So.
Well, I guess maybe a public service announcement to those listening that are perhaps considering heading towards that general neck of the woods. The areas of Achill and Erris and Mayo and Roskilde and Donegal are nominally Gaeltacht areas. So this means that the primary language in use is Gaelic. So as a result, much of the limited road signage can often be exclusively in Irish. The associated English place names may or may not even resemble their Gaelic equivalent. But interestingly, the Mulranny golf course was predominantly due to the Midland and Great Western Railway extending a branch line from Westport to Achill in the late 1890s for the purposes of tourism. They also built the Midland Great Western Hotel. Neither the railway line nor the hotel still exist, but I guess Achill and Mulranny are two community golfing outposts, one perhaps slightly more formal than the other. So how would you go about painting a picture of the relative seclusion of Achill overlooking Kiel Bay, I believe?
Yeah, it's so Achill's a little town, and you sort of, as you drive into town, just before you hit the coffee shops and the little local greengrocer and so on, there's just this flat patch of land with a hut on, basically, and the tributary that leads out to sea goes through it, and there's a bank of shingle, and then and you can just hear, and you can see if you hit your ball wide enough, which I did, you get so you can see the ocean crashing in the other side. It's holiday golf, I think, for a lot of people, because because it seems like quite a lot of people go on holiday there, so you can pay, I can't remember what it was, we paid a green fee in an honesty box, and it was, ladders to pay, to play, and it was just terrific. And then Mulranny just feels a bit more like a more popular local golf club, when we saw the roll-up congregating despite the weather forecast coming in behind us, and they don't mess around. And we spent 10 minutes in the clubhouse as well. There's a whole load of history there. It's just a wonderful thing. And, I live in Surrey, as you know, and there's loads of fabulous golf around here, but I can just imagine if you lived out somewhere like that, or Brewer or Golspie, that the local links is just such an important part of community life, and probably of growing up as well. I would, again, it's Mulranny, I could just carry on looping around there for eternity, and I'd be fine. I'd be wet. But
an hour or so back north is it's where you came from originally. That particular day, I think you were staying in the Broadhaven Bay Hotel in Belmullet. I know Jamie from Rye fits into the Cairn story, so you might tell us a little bit about what the genesis really of that trip was, and how Jamie fits into the story.
Well, I think it was the Golfers Journal had a thing with Jerry, the chairman of
Jerry Maguire, yeah.
Yeah, Cairn, talking. He was reading from his COVID diaries, and I think that just really caught Jamie, and he was interested in the place. It already had a passion for far-flung golf, and I think he and his family have holidayed in some pretty remote Scottish places, hence the Baghdad with Brewer and Durness and so on. They were doing a life membership thing, which I think he was vaguely embarrassed about having signed up to without ever seeing Cairn, but he'd not been, and this is now a couple of years later, I guess, and he hadn't been, and we were like, if you're going to go, I don't want to invite myself, but I'd love to go. So we booked it. I booked the wrong month, but Cairn were brilliant enough to manage to cope with my incompetence, and there's no surprise on your face there that I booked the wrong month, so thanks. And to be fair, Jamie's been quite restrained in ripping into me about that. It's only
would have been completely warranted.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, we went out there, and what a joy to see his first glimpse of the place. And I could imagine, he'd never said this, but I could imagine if that was me and I'd put down a joining fee to be a life member, I'd be curious, maybe slightly nervous that it might be underwhelming or something. Or one thing, there's many words you could use for Cairn, but underwhelming's not going to be among them for anyone. It's
no.
They were wonderful. We spent time with Jerry. Fiona was fabulous in booking us in. The whole team there are just delightful, and the golf course is off the scale. I mean, epic is the word everyone always uses about it. But it's strangely intimate in a way as well. I don't know, there's just such a range of golf holes there. And the two routings are fascinating and really interesting to add variety to your time there. We ended up playing the front line about 12 times because we kept catching four balls, and Jamie's he works at Rye. You don't do that without being pretty swift, and I don't hang around. So we kept looping the front line, running into play that should have been holes and holes ahead of us. So we go around again and just got to know those holes really well. And then the Wild Atlantic routing that goes up into the dunes is otherworldly. I don't think I'll ever play anywhere as mad as that, or as good as that in a way. I think it's, I've heard people say Cairn's too much, but, we're here to play golf and be inspired and have fun. And when you're up at the top of that chunk of links land, it's just a spectacular. It's like hill walking. It feels like a real peak experience to be up there. I loved it, as you can probably tell. And what was really, really gratifying is that Jamie did too. The life member went there and just went, this place is amazing.
You utilised a magnificent metaphor for Cairn. saying that it was like a cheese-fueled dream. I'm just wondering, is it the routing? Is it the landscape? Is it the signage or lack thereof? Is the setting? Perhaps the often wild weather conditions, or is it an amalgamation of all of those things?
I think it's all of them, but particularly the land. So when you switch, you've been there, you switch at 8, is it 8?
Yeah.
And just play up through this mad valley, and it's uphill all the way, but it never feels it. And you've just got these huge banks on either side. It's just a brilliant hole. And that gets you to the top of the planet, it feels like. And it's extreme golf, but still playable. That was the thing. Neither Jamie or I are great golfers, but we probably left a few golf balls knocking around Cairn. Everyone does, but it was never anything other than just pure fun, unadulterated fun. It did feel like it was, you sort of pinch yourself stuff in certain spots. Some of the holes are just brilliant.
Listeners may be interested to hear that Eamon Mangan, Jerry's predecessor as the chairperson of Eris Tourism and the early driving force in getting Cairn built and established, has just released a new book on how the communities of Belmullet and Blacksod overcame the odds to build a course on what is the very edge of Europe. I'll put a link to the publisher Mayo Books page in the show notes where interested parties may purchase a copy. So
great.
We'll move on to Critch now, located quite a bit farther north and maybe not quite as west, but it's located near Donegal Airport at Carrickfinn, often voted as one of the most scenic airports in the world. So, Critch, if you're flying, some people do fly to Rosapenna. It's probably not a bad way to get to northwest Donegal, but en route to Rosapenna, Critch is adjacent to the airport if you do fly, and it's one of the most scenic 9-hole courses in the world, I suspect. Frank Casey Jr. at Rosapenna is always cajoling visitors to pop up the road for the afternoon to sample its delights. And I tend to suggest to friends when I hear they're travelling to North Donegal. So it's easier to get to Critch from Downings than it is from Dublin, and you won't regret it. It's somewhat discombobulating for the golfer first time around. You might just perhaps initially describe the drive in.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that Frank Casey Jr. recommends it, because I felt slightly awkward on that trip that we were going to Critch on the way to Rosapenna, because the whole objective was to get to Rosapenna and play some golf there and see that amazing place. So I was sort of not embarrassed, but I felt that I might need to explain myself of this 4-hour detour. It's an hour drive, I guess, a detour, but you get near and you have this drive in where you're not sure which holes you're coming through, and you're right in the middle of the golf course. And then you swing round and it just drops down to this gorgeous clubhouse right by the sea. And you hop out. We went in the club house, and they'd had a medal on, and there was a rugby match on. It might have been curling. I can't remember. There was something on the TV. There was a whole congregation in there getting stuck in the early afternoon. It
probably wasn't curling anyway. Maybe hurling?
It could have been hurling, yeah. I think you must have misheard me there, actually, Shane. So they were just delightful in there. They said, go out, fill your boots, and, if you want to play again, if there's no one on the tee when you come around, do. So I got instantly lost. You stick a ball on a peg on the first tee and just think, where do I go? I had a vague idea, but there were 2 or 3 directions. So we smack our drives down there and have no idea if we're going straight on or left or right. And then we got the hang of the signage on the tee, so they have these wonderful geometric shapes to give you some idea. And second time round was a lot easier, but it's a fabulous golf course. And number 2 in particular blew me away. And then you've got this third green perched out on the ocean, really, and you're just hitting this shot down, thinking it's downhill. I don't want to plunge into the water. And everyone talks about the 6th hole, but there are no weak holes at Critch. So we stopped after 9 for probably 5 seconds just to make sure it was okay to go again, and went again. And, what a start to a trip that was, to have 2 swift loops of Critch. Amazing place. I loved that too. My boss at West Byfleet, Kevin, just said, you gotta go. You have to go. You'll love it. And we absolutely did. So, don't regret that one for a second.
No, super spot, and possibly the best view that I've ever come across from a golf club car park.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's just an amazing place. But they every 5 yards on that coast is just a view that, I don't know, us English would sort of keel over for. It's just such a staggering landscape, and it's wild and rugged. It is the wild Atlantic way. It's marvellous.
Well, by way of trying to provide a few more possibilities to intrepid travellers, and I note that you may be scribbling away in a second also, you might also enjoy the delights of Otway, Gweedore and Lisfannon. But, I mean, the golf offering in Donegal is just really top class.
Yeah, they were on my list, actually. I can't remember who said Gweedore. Yeah, that might have been one of Jasper's recommendations, or probably Di.
Or perhaps, what's his name?
Sean Arbel?
Sean Arbel.
Yeah, he loves them. Otway in particular, I've got a feeling he's mentioned that 4 or 5 times. I love the way that these sort of urges build in you, because someone will mention somewhere and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I've had a couple of those recently where it's like the 3rd or 4th mention. You're like, okay, right, well, it makes no sense, but I now know I need to go there because enough people have mentioned it. So,
well, the pennies finally dropping.
Me.
Yeah.
I'll be heading that way again.
Well, listen, the jewel in the crown in Donegal, or one of them anyway, is the 63 holes at the Rosapenna Golf Resort. It was the Coast Guard's 9 that you featured, perched up on the hill overlooking the resort, with Sheephaven Bay as a twinkling backdrop. I remember my first trip to Rosapenna in 2002. Back then, 7 of the current Coast Guard's holes were in play as part of the back 9 of the old Tom Morris course. Since the Caseys built the Strand 9, the Coast Guard's has now been modified somewhat and acts as a relief 9 for intrepid guests and Downing's locals alike. I know the Roskill Peninsula, where the Rosapenna Resort is located, has made a big impression on you. What specifically stands out to you about Downings and the Carrigard area, and I guess specifically the Coast Guard 9, which you've probably played, I would imagine at this stage, 10 or 12 times?
I don't know, I lost count, but the local area is just, there's a sort of serenity to it, I think. It's, we've spent some time there and in the local towns, and you pop in the local pubs, and it just seems a very peaceful part of the world somehow. And then you turn into Rosapenna, and it's it's quite rightly on the global map now, but it was always a golfing destination because the old Tom course in its various guises
has been since 1893.
Yeah. And rightly so, because it's one of those places, a bit like Dornoch, I guess, going back a few years when it was less visited. It was a place that you'd aspire to get to, and it would be, the travel there would be part of the allure of it. It's very easy to get to Rosapenna these days, and the golf has come on leaps and bounds, but it's it's an extraordinary place. And just the thing that I clocked last time I went was just the people there just love golf. They absolutely love it. And it comes through in the staff in the hotel. They're so proud of it, and rightly so. It's just extraordinary and just keeps getting better and better and better. And St. Patrick's now, the new course there, probably played that 8 or 9 times now. And I know you've played it more than that and over a longer span.
You're catching up on me.
It's just developing all the time, and it's the conditioning, and it's just settling down. And golf courses take time to sort of settle down. But when I went round there actually with one club in September with one of Frank's 6 irons, I think. He handed it to me in the shop and I gave it back to him with the sweet spot intact. But still, just isn't that amazing that it's a top, 45 or something? It went up again. It's at top 50 in the world, so early in its incarnation. And you can go around there with a 5 iron and still have an absolute blast. The greens are wild. Sorry, I'm meant to be talking about Coast Guards, but the thing about Rossabana, I think, one of 18 things about it, is it's got that full spread from the academy course that I call Coast Guards and was, partly or part of that's intact as original holes, to a proper bona fide world-class links course. It's got it all. And the people who are there visiting, you don't go there if you don't just absolutely love the pure game, the proper game of links. I can't get enough of the place.
Yeah, you dragged your poor wife back for nominally some rest and recuperation, but you couldn't help yourself, could you?
Well, I knew she'd love it.
Because I had suggested maybe you should go up the mountain and do that, and you went playing golf.
Well, I didn't play much. So Michelle came round St. Pat's with me in my 5 iron. She took photos and did a sort of flora and fauna survey on the way round. So I'd sort of finished. I remember putting out on 13 and looking round, and Michelle's on her hands and knees examining a moss or something. So she had as much fun as I did, I think. And then Coast Guards, I just whipped out there a few times, while she was in the treatment room or whatever. You can't just leave. You can't look at it out the window and not go and spin around it.
Well, she was lucky she didn't go too far off piste because, as we know from a chat with Angela Moser, there literally is human eating moss pits off the fairways up in Rossabana.
That sums it up, actually. It's a bad place.
I was delighted to see you take a trip down memory lane to feature the links at Mitcham in Common Grounds, where I think some part of your current trajectory of adventures commenced. So you swapped a commuter train for an altogether different rhythm many years ago, dictated by the seasons and nature itself. The links at Mitcham, of course, was the initial home, I think, for Prince's Golf Club prior to their migration down the Kent coast. Returning there must have facilitated many feelings of nostalgia.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So I left there to move indoors in 2007, took a job in the office at New Zealand Golf Club, which, that was an amazing step in itself. But I just always have had, and it's not going away, this itch for the sort of honesty of greenkeeping, the physical labour. It keeps you fit. I loved being in touch with the seasons. I loved sharing the space. This time of year, actually, you get a hard frost, and I sort of look out the window at a really hard frost and think, 20 years back, I'd have been trying hard to prise the markers out of the ground, to move the markers in the morning at Mitcham. And on those hard frosts, walking along what sounded like hollow ground with little owls for company, and it's just the most magical time of my life. I was there for 5 years, and it was by far the deepest time of my life. And now, all these years later, I realise I was sort of drifting around on that tees mower on the 16th tee, sort of dreaming of how I could do what I'm partially doing now, write about golf really, and write about these places where we ply our passions. And I've got a real strong pull towards greenkeeping at the moment. We'll probably come on to in a bit.
Oh, good. You got permission to mention it, which is a step in the right direction. Thanks, Don. Yeah, so, the outlier, I think, in the book has to be Coll, which is the Hebrides, I think. I have a little note here, just Coll in search of a playing handicap or perhaps just a mindset adjustment. What can you tell us about Cleat Farm and a course that's built annually anew by members since 1975.
So, one of the people I asked about suggestions for the book is a really well-travelled American lady called Pam, and I mentioned her in the acknowledgements at the front. She's played all over the place. She's played virtually every links course in the UK, and has a really good eye for great golf, but also a story. And she said, "Oh, this has popped up." So I think it was on one of the sort of group WhatsApp groups. She'd come into contact with a chap whose parents spend part of the year on Col. This chap's mother was born on Col in a cottage, and so they spend their summers over in the cottage. And they're keen golfers from the Glasgow area and have friends on the island who are keen golfers. And it just became clear that there were three main protagonists who are now in their 70s who have been playing there and basically cutting out the golf course every May and playing it while they're on the island, and then they let it go back to pasture. It's part of a larger working farm, but the farmer lets them use this bit to get their golfing fix without having to get on the ferry to the next island where there's a proper golf course on the next island. And it sounded wonderful. And so Pam and I went, and she's in the hotel. I stayed with Campbell, who's one of the gentlemen who sets the golf course up. And in the morning, he'd drive us up there, 5-minute drive up the road, and let us loose on this 9-hole golf course at very linksy turf. It's sort of in the middle of the island. It's not coastal, but it's up on the high ground in the middle of the island. And they just cut it out with pretty basic machinery that sits in this weather-worn shed every summer. And they have a collar. They have I think there's 3 majors or something that they've played for the last, 50 years, I guess. And the Col Open in a good year would have 20 people playing in it, but it's still golf. And so we went around it, and part of the charm was how rustic it was. A great deal of the charm was how much it meant to those people and how wonderful and hospitable and welcoming they were. But there's some good golf holes on it. And there's a couple near the end of the loop where they're just fabulous, fabulous holes. And there's no one there. A few kids turned up on bikes. Oh, sorry, the other thing that I have to mention we joined. So there was a fee to play 9 holes, I think. There was a fee to pay a week ticket where you could play as much as you like for the week. And this is for people migrating to the island for the summer, I guess. Or you could join, I think it was €30. It's 30 or 30, it might have been €35 for the whole year. But there's no process, you don't get a bag tag or anything. There is an upcycled large whiskey bottle on the bar in the hotel, and you stuff your money in there, and you've got no proof or anything, but you don't need it. The whole community is built on cooperation and trust and everything. So, I've never been a member of a few clubs over the years, but I've never been so proud as to wedge €30 in this whiskey bottle and say, I'm a member of Col for the year. So it's only lapsed because I can't get near the whiskey bottle at the moment. So
is membership of Col more a state of mind as opposed to a specific annual subscription, do you think?
Well, I did pay it, but I think you pay for it. Yeah, it is. The state of mind sounds about right. It's a slightly defiant thing as well. We're going to mow it out and we're going to carry on doing it, and it's not easy work for those guys. For me, that and Coast Guards were the 2 chapters of the book that meant the most to me. I think I loved that adventure. It was ridiculous to go and try and do it, and yet it just came away. Pam and I just changed for the experience. It was fabulous.
Moving on, Richard, a mutual friend of ours once said that golf sometimes seems to try too hard. So much can be had with so little if done with simple elegance and subtle nuance. If this type of golf were replicated, which seems entirely possible given the parcel of land it's on, we would all be richer for it. Jasper was, of course, explaining the golfing delights on offer over a swathe of sandy land near Bury St Edmunds in West Suffolk. You feature Worley in the book. As you know, I too was fortunate to experience the delights of Mildenhall over the course of summer 2025, and it was a delight. But we're really not here to hear too much from me, so your comments on Royal Worlington and Newmarket are both anticipated and very, very welcome.
Oh. Well, I love that Jasper's words, along with those at the start of that chapter from David Noimoyle, also about Royal Worlington. They're my two favourite passages in the book, and they're not even my words. So, but I think that the fact that Worley captures people like that who just know golf inside out, and they just get the nuance and the refinement of the place, and it's such a bland piece of land on first. You had that experience last summer. You drive in and you cut across the 9th approach in order to park your car, and you look across there, and it's just kind of, I remember thinking, what's waiting for us out there? Jasper he wasn't quite there yet, so I was hanging around for a quarter of an hour or something, just peering out, and walked onto the first tee and looked around. I'd intentionally not done too much prep, because I wanted to see it with fresh eyes, but of course there's a hell of a lot written about Worley, and I enjoyed delving into that later on. But it just feels like if you're interested in architecture, it's a bit easier to do something interesting with a fabulous piece of land. Can you hear Betty?
I can.
I might have to start again on.
It's all right. Keep going. Wouldn't be the first time a dog has interrupted the podcast.
No, that's true. Just to have made so much of that parcel of land and have so much variety, and it's not long. It never feels tight. You've got a couple of holes with shared fairways. You've got some wild greens and just quirks, and yet none of the quirks detract from it. It feels to me like it's just an enormous achievement for it to turn out that brilliant on that bit of land. And the turf, again, a bit like Cleve. How is that turf where it is? Because you might be striking the ball from the middle of the 4th fairway at Rye at times at Mildenhall. It's rock hard and strong fescue. It just feels fantastic to play off.
Well, for anyone that hasn't listened to the Course Diaries episode that Cookie Jar recorded with Mike Morrison and Najim Notley regarding Royal Worlington and Newmarket, I will put a link in the show notes, and would heartily recommend that you consider it for a listen. It really is well worth your time. Now, Richard, you will not be surprised to hear that I recently unearthed a common thread between Royal Worlington and Mulranny in County Mayo. As we learned from Mike and Nigel on the aforementioned Cookie Jar episode, the Musselburgh professional Tom Hood was centrally involved in laying out Worley, and indeed the original Mulranny. So how much of the original Mulranny is left is something I've yet to establish. I know it was modified. However, golf really was, and indeed is, a very small world.
Interesting.
As yet, I've only played one of the 2 final courses for discussion this evening. Both of these courses appear a little bit out of place as choices, if you don't mind me saying, in that they're decidedly not like the others. So I'm referring to Morfontaine and indeed the Addington. I'm wondering why, first of all, you selected both of those locations.
Well, I loved Morfontaine, the sort of main course there, but it's the Valliere that is in the book, and that was, I think, Tom Simpson's first routing. and it's more or less intact. There's a couple of holes that were modified when they sold a piece of land nearby, but I think there are pretty much 7 Simpson holes, and it's just another mad piece of property. And the thing that comes through there is that he's not afraid. He wasn't afraid, even at that tender stage of his career, to take massive risks with the green sites. It's just the most, I'm not sure I've had more fun on a golf course, and to go there looking forward to playing, one of the greatest 18-hole courses in Europe, and that was a total privilege. And, if I never get back there again, I don't mind. It's just to have played it was a total thrill. But then the Valliere was just on a different scale in terms of the amount of fun. Can you hear my dog choking in the background? She's excited about Morfontaine because she's French, you see, Betty. So she's, the homeland. Yeah, quite. So I came off there, and we had 2 loops round the Valliere with Di, who's a dear friend, and Adam, and another friend, actually, James Boone, was with us, and he couldn't play on the day, but there was nothing going to stop him walking around. And we just came off like spellbound by the place. Didn't want it to end, but we had to be off the property at 6. So, if they hadn't said that, I'd probably still be there, quite honestly. It's ridiculous.
I'll just stop you there because it was almost like a Chinese water torture for you, or a torture chamber to a certain degree, playing with James and Adam and Di. I have a note here, Parisian ace alert, so near but yet so far. So before we delve into a little bit more of the details of the Valliere course at Morfontaine, I wanted to address a theme that you often torture yourself with. I am, of course, specifically referring to holes in one. Now, I believe Di had a hole in one on the trip to France, but in an effort to provide you with a little succor, and in preparation for our chat today, I did find a few statistics that may or may not assuage and provide balm to your particular frustration. So according to the Google machine, it appears that the statistical probability of an average golfer to have a hole in one is 1 in 12,500. A low handicapper is 1 in 5,000, and a tour pro is 1 in 2,500 to 3,000. So the aforementioned statistics, I reckon, place your chances of an ace nearer to the 5,000 to 1 odds than anything else. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, but I think if you were searching for odds for someone who stands on the tee every time he plays a par 3 and goes, well, this is blatantly not fair. I've hit loads of nice shots. That increases the odds to 1 in a million, I think. Di didn't quite hole in one. He nearly holed in one on the big course, within an inch. And then on that, let's think, 1, 2, 3, the 4th, a tiny little flick down the hill on the Valliere. His ball was so close. And then mine hit the lip with exactly the same shot, pulled it left, it spun off the hill and hit the lip. But yeah, I'm starting to relax about that. Having seen one in person this summer, I just, what sort of fuss about really? It's just a fluke, basically,
We didn't see that one, in fact.
Well, all right. I saw it being picked out of the hole fairly deliberately. And I thought, well, why am I getting so worried about this? It's not helping.
Someday, Richard, you just keep playing golf. As I said to you earlier on, try and keep the ball on the ground. That's probably a half decent start. But anyway.
Well, I have a friend who's not had one, who's the GM at Minch, Tom, and he vows that when he makes one, he's just going to walk off and never come back to golf. So,
mic drop.
Yeah, he's off, the moment, and he's a good golfer, goodness me. Tom can play, so that gives me some encouragement, I think.
It sounds like the Valliere was right up your alley, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, I haven't answered your question, though. So, Valliere and Addington, we'll probably come on to that, but by the end of the book, I was slightly worried that I'd been going too deep down the rustic rabbit hole because, golf comes in all shapes and sizes, and the book is definitely themed around pretty low-key, sustainable type golf. And I drifted away from the great architecture a bit, and just seeing Morfontaine in the flesh, both courses just sort of triggered something in me there. Because, a long time ago, when I was a greenkeeper, actually, I made a hell of an effort to go and see some proper world-class golf courses. And I'm lucky there's loads of them around here, so I do get to play a very high standard of golf quite regularly. But my interest in the architectural side had waned a little. It was part of the blend, but I wasn't that mad about it. And St. Pat's in particular had sort of sparked that. The more I see it, the more I understand how it all works together. I think that's a particularly good example, St. Pat's. And Morfontaine and Addington were just nudges along that line, like I was sort of coming out of the rustic blinkers and not tiring of them, because I've loved everyone in the book, but there's other stuff I need to see. And the truly great golf courses are works of art. They're complex, brilliant, sort of otherworldly artifacts that we get to go and enjoy. We can't go and play at the San Siro, and the actual pitch is like every other pitch in the world, but we get to go and follow in the footsteps of these places. I've been to some amazing places, and those two just woke up. I don't want that to stop, so I need to buckle down and move back into the normal world.
Well, before I bring you on to the Addington, which is obviously your epilogue, I'd like you to have a think about Tom Simpson for a second. The courses that he's touched and the land that he draped them over. What and where do you start to think about when I ask you that question?
It's mainly it brings to me a sense of scarcity. Actually, I haven't seen enough, so there's quite a few golf courses that Simpson played a part on, and some of his work is sketchy to know what's his and what's been reversed and so on. That's the case at Sunningdale and Muirfield and so on. New Zealand is a cracking example, and I understand fairly well after 8 years working there, and it's a mile up the road. I love the place so much. I've learned so much about what he did there and how it was restrained and brilliant, and I think that sums him up. He was subtle. Baltray, I'm still trying to get my head around, so I need to go back and play it another couple of times. I loved it, but I'm not sure why yet. I haven't sort of got the theme that connects Baltray together. I can't explain why I think so much of it. But then there's a whole load of Simpson I haven't seen, and that feels like a gap in my itinerary. And it was a friend who is a fellow lover of Simpson's stuff. We were just playing around with the idea this morning of doing a few of the French ones, because obviously I've seen Morfontaine, it's wonderful, but Chantilly and several others over there deserve, they're not that far away from me here. And on the outskirts of London, I need to see more of Simpson, and a whole swathe of it is in France. So.
And Belgium.
Yeah. So I think that might be a little, and I've always meant to learn French, having dropped it in school. So, that's a pretty good reason to do it if it gets me onto some Simpson tracks.
Certainly is. Well, your final paragraph on the chapter on the Valliere is magical. And if you'll permit me, I'd like to read it out to conclude this part of our conversation. As a parting shot for today, I look up the meaning of Valliere, and I'm advised it is the name for someone who lived in a small valley. So when the great reckoning comes, if you could kindly arrange for me to inhabit that small valley into which the Forth drops, with a wedge and a couple of balls, I shall spend all eternity as a Valliere, locked in a mortal combat with the ghost of Tom Simpson. That's just wonderful, Richard.
I still wouldn't hold it, but I still wouldn't stop smiling. So, thank you.
You're welcome. We finally come to the epilogue of the book as we begin to wind down our conversation. wandering atop of a hill with Ryan, Arlo and Chip. Explain yourself and perhaps how you reflect on the experiences and where you will journey to next.
Well, so Chip is a dear friend, an American who was over in January for a few days, and we managed to cobble together a bit of golf. We had a wonderful game with two other good friends at New Zealand, and had the place to ourselves, and just had a meal in which we just never stopped laughing afterwards. Then we went to Woking, which was rock solid frozen, and we walked around there. But that was just so wonderful to see. And I know the heritage of that place inside out, and the golf course, and Chip had never seen either of those. He's a well-travelled and very articulate golfer and person. So we had a marvellous time just strolling around and exploring the clubhouse on Hook Heath and so on. And then Addington was also closed, but I really wanted to go, and luckily Ryan was around and happy to spend some time with us, and he so often is. He's just so enthusiastic for the place. He's I think he said he never stops thinking about the place unless he's asleep, and it probably does carry on while he's asleep sometimes. So watching Chip, who's played golf all over the world, and Ryan just exploring the heritage and the architecture and the ambition that Ryan has for that place, it just felt like history was echoing Abercrombie's long tenure there, just living and breathing Addington. And West Byfleet actually is one of the few things he did after settling in and living at Addington. He came round to redesign Bleakdown in the early 1920s, which is a wonderful thing for West Byfleet. But I just stayed at a distance really and just watched those two, and Ryan's just gorgeous dog Arlo just pottering around the place on this freezing day in the middle of January. And I thought, what a game this is. Abercrombie's left behind this. It's a masterpiece. It's a Guernica or something for us golfers. And you've got these two people from other sides of the world with all their different, backgrounds and influences, just locked in endless conversations about the place. It was marvellous. So that was on the back of the Moorfontein thing. And I just thought, I just need to go deep into the architecture and agronomy again. It's just, I don't regret coming out of it, because I've had a wonderful time working in clubs in the administration. It's just, it never feels like a job really. But I'm starting to think about how I can write about architecture more and agronomy more and just build that back into my life. It's an extremely long answer, but you have an edit button, I think. So
I shan't be editing that. Listen, we'll get on to a few other topics for discussion, but just wondering if you can tell listeners how they can purchase Common Grounds.
Yeah, so thank you. So it's a platform. I think you asked me this last time and I couldn't remember the address. It's a Big Cartel. If you search for Richard Pennell and Common Grounds, it's a Big Cartel shop, and you actually buy the book from my front room that I'm sat in at the moment, and you get it all parcelled up. And if you're not already reading Pitchmarks, every Sunday I'm rambling on about this or that, and it's that community and that process is really good for me, actually. I love it. I've made so many dear friends through that, including yourself and Simon Pope, and it just goes on the list. So yeah, well, that's how you get hold of it.
To make life easy for listeners, I will put a link to the online shop in the show notes. And
thank you.
Although they certainly won't, almost certainly anyway, they won't get copies this side of Christmas. I would urge you, dear listener, to invest. So
thank you.
What's next from a writing perspective?
So a few things really, and I've a dozen odd things in my head that I'd love to do one day, and I've had a bit of time thinking about what comes next. And so I have a regular gig with Links magazine, which I love. It's sort of writing about British golf for an predominantly American audience, and I love that. It's a discipline to do that one, and it's a joy when it comes out. Same goes for the Links Diary. I've got a piece to write for them in the next couple of weeks about Covesea in Scotland, which was just another outrageous piece of land and gorgeous story. So I love those magazine pieces. Having Common Grounds land on the driveway on a pallet more than 2 years after Grassroots just reminded me how special it is to hold your own book in your hand. It's something before Grassroots, I think I'd dreamt of it so long I'd forgotten I dreamt of it until it happened. So I want to do more books. I'd love to do a Links book. I have a book that's written, Mulligan, that you and I have talked about before, which I'd like to find a way of publishing that. I don't think it's not going to change the world, but it's important to me, and the couple of people who've read it love it. So I think that's an interesting thing. I might try and get that done next year. But the main thing, and we're just about to go to Switzerland, so I'm taking a wedge of agronomy books with me, and a number of links to previous episodes of the Firm and Fast. So I'm going to write an agronomy book, non-technical, not too scientific, just try and educate's a strong word, but just try and make simpler the dark arts, because we are hugely reliant on greenkeepers, and I've sat the other side of that fence and done that gorgeous manual physical work for a living for a few years, and I just think there's a divide there that can be bridged, and I've talked to a couple of people about it, and Don Wilson has been an enormous supporter of me the last couple of years. I'm hugely grateful for that, and this is a passion project for him as well. I think if between us we can get the right tone and structure, it could be something really, really interesting. So that's next, and I have a title for it, but I'm not going to give that away. I'm very pleased with the title, so that's a good start. The first 2 words I really like. So
sounds like a primer for golf course committees.
Yeah, maybe. I think, and just kind of, I don't know, just you see in clubs all the time communication around turf matters, and there can either be none or very little, and that just causes a whole swathe of problems that the secretary or course manager or both normally have to sort out. And you see very technical information that no one can really cope with, and I just think there's a whole piece there around picking out some of the interesting facts and figures and practices and just explaining it, making them simpler. And I think it'd be fun. I've got to get the tone right. I wrote the preface, which Donald, I'm sure, listened to this and think, well, he hasn't sent that to me yet, so I'm going to send that to him in a minute. But the preface is sort of why I'm writing it. And then we're going to go to Switzerland with a whole pile of turf books and work out what comes next. So I'm really excited about it. I work best delving into something, and this is something I've wanted to delve in since I was on the mower. So it's 20 odd years.
Looking ahead to 2026, Mr. Pennell, have you penciled anything interesting from a golf perspective into your diary?
Not too much. I'm playing around with those things at the moment. So I have a few. We were talking earlier about these places that come on your radar and they get mentioned 2 or 3 times. I've got a few of those. So I am definitely going to Allendale to play golf with Robin Down at some point. Robin wrote a wonderful book called Golf in the Wild, and the sequel is almost equally wonderful. And I recommend them to anyone who asks. And he's delightful. I've played 2 or 3 games. 3 games with Robin. He's just a dear friend and a beautiful writer and a really bad putter. So we're going to go and do that. Royal Aberdeen, I can't not go there anymore. I've another great friend there who's been inviting me, and he's a far better golfer than me, but he seems to be willing to, come and look for my golf ball here and there. So I just can't wait to see all the history at Aberdeen and the links itself. And then another couple of strange ones. You'd never think of the Lake District as a place to play golf. And going up and playing Silloth on the way somewhere 18 months ago sort of awakened something in me. Since then, I'm playing at West Hill with him tomorrow. The chap who, one of the people who joined us at Silloth on the back nine, grew up playing at Dunnerholme, which is in the Lakes, 11-hole links golf course, just proper rustic golf. Probably should have been in the book, but I didn't get there in time. So I'm definitely going to do that this year. And then maybe a bit of France, maybe a bit of Simpson, I think. That's my plan. And there'll be loads of other stuff that gets wedged in here and there on the way there. But yeah, that's the general idea, I think.
Good. Listen, Common Grounds was obviously written over the course of late 23 and the vast majority of 2024. So before I let you go, it's probably time to put you under a little pressure with regard to your 2025 golfing adventures. With this period in mind, what are 3 indelible on-course memories that immediately jump forth? And you might paint a wordscape for the listeners of those experiences, however fleeting or enduring they may have been.
Okay. Well, I'm going to cheat. So you said 3, but we've already mentioned Golspie, so that would have been in there if I hadn't already been raving about it. So Golspie's, that doesn't count. Our day at, what were we, Hayling and Pulborough, and you picking out your ball from the bottom of the cup on the 8th of Pulborough, that's, I'm never going to forget that. It was a blend of being really happy for you and absolutely sick to the back teeth. So, well played.
I still to remember you won 3 and 2, so don't be giving out too much.
Just so I have this thing of, being non-competitive, but my goodness, if someone aces against you, that sort of goes out the window. So that's one.
It must be said, Richard, that I have to apologise for all and sundry at Pulborough. We were late for a dinner engagement in Woking, so I never had an opportunity. We didn't even go inside, so bar the fact that the guys behind us knew that I had a hole-in-one, I should have probably bought a bottle of whiskey and left it on the counter, but next time.
Well, I think you liked it enough that you'll be back, so there will be a next time. So, Brancaster at high tide. I played Brancaster maybe 10, 12 years ago, but went back there for the first time in all of that time and played it at high tide, the classic experience, place cut off. And I'd forgotten the golf course is amazing. It's absolutely amazing links at Brancaster. I sort of had in mind that it was the club and the feel of this establishment and the windswept nature of it that was the appeal. And all of that does appeal to me, actually. It's absolutely in my sweet spot. But the golf course is so good. So that was one thing, just standing at the far end of there with someone who's been playing there his whole life, and his father played there his whole life too, and just looking across and thinking, wow, what a game this is. These connections we make are priceless. So is that 2? I don't know. Cavendish with Hickories was absolutely
That's 2,
amazing.
plus Golspie is 3, but if you want to...
Well, Golspie's not counting. Royal Dornoch, played Royal Dornoch, finally. Finally managed to, that's 3. North Berwick, my goodness. Covesea's, I'm on about 7 now. Covesea's absolutely, I can't wait to start writing a piece for Links Diary on Covesea. It was just a staggering place. Yeah. I think of all of that, Golspie was the most surprising of the whole year. I knew it'd be nice. I thought I'd like half of it, and it's links with a bit of Heathland. What no one had told me was that the Heathland holes are absolutely amazing. They could have been transplanted from north of Paris as well. So it's just a fabulous place. That might be it, actually. That's 10, I think.
That is about 10, yeah. As it's a while since we asked you for some book recommendations, and the last time I asked you that question, you referenced Alistair Cook's marvellous Mania and The Anatomy of a Golf Course by Tom Doak, its additions to listeners' libraries. It goes without saying that Grassroots and Common Grounds should also be on any discerning golfer's bookshelves. notwithstanding that, what other 2 books would you recommend for listeners looking to augment their libraries?
So you asked me for 3 experiences of the year and I gave you 10. So 2 books, I'm going to give you 3. I'm sorry. One's not a golf book. So I'm reading at the suggestion of I'm rereading at the suggestion of a dear friend, Simon Barnes, who was the chief sports editor for the Times for years. He wrote a book called The Meaning of Sport some time ago. He's famous for his bad birdwatcher books, but he's a brilliant writer on sport, really entertaining, funny, very thoughtful. It's sort of a philosophical take on sport. And he hates golf, which is quite interesting. And I sort of wish he didn't hate golf, because he writes so beautifully about the Olympics and football and tennis and every other thing. And all he can do is get slightly annoyed by the clothes we wear as golfers. And I think he's missing out, but I think we're all missing out, because he would write brilliantly about golf if he didn't hate us. So, but it's a great book. So, but that's not a golf book, so that doesn't count. So I've got 2 more. So the first, I've just read and reviewed this for the Collectors magazine, but Practical Golf Greenkeeping is by W.K. Galt, who was once the head greenkeeper, I suppose they would have called him in that time, at Portmarnock.
Portmarnock.
And then went to and then went to Bruntsfield Links, and this book was virtually lost. And then a couple of the British Golf Club collectors came across mention of it, and they found a copy in a library. And true to form, Grant Books, with Don Wilson's enthusiasm and commitment to do the right thing, he's republished it, and it was written in 1913. It's the first book written by a greenkeeper on agronomy, and goodness me, like, the whole world has changed, and so has the world of turf, but it's still relevant, and it's funny, and it's very well written. So you'll see a review of it if you're looking through the green, if the dog stops barking. I've got one more to go when the dog ceases barking. And then this one's funny, Shane. I asked you if I could read a couple of passages from it, and I now realise that I haven't got my reading glasses on, so we might skip those, and I'll stick them in afterwards. But right, so when I was at Brancaster, we spent some time in the clubhouse, and Pat Ward-Thomas, who I've read before, he was a past captain there, and he loved Brancaster, and his books are all over the little bookcases here at the top of the stairs. And so a friend reminded me of the Long Green Fairway the other day, which I've had on my shelf, and it was one of the 4 who played in the chapter at Kington that gave me this copy, which he'd had for years. And so that's my next choice, because a little like Darwin and maybe Alistair Cook, although there's not as much Cook around, they're just, and Longhurst too, they're very consumable. So there's a chapter on the delights of high courses, which ends with a chapter, it's 2.5 pages, but it ends with a passage about Kington that my eyesight won't permit me to read. So there you go. I think the listener will have to go and find the Long Green Fairway collection of Ward Thomas's stuff and find it for themselves, because I haven't got my glasses. Having failed to log in 4 times before we started, the fact that I can't even read the thing I was planning to read just about sums it up, doesn't it?
There's a certain congruity to it, yes. Listen, Mr. Pennell, on behalf of those of us that enjoy your weekly Pitchmarks updates, your articles for Links Magazine, Links Diary, amongst others, keep doing what you're doing. It's always a treat to pore over your musings, irrespective of where they magically materialise. All that's left for me to do is to remind listeners about the competition that I mentioned in the episode introduction. Thank you for your time, as always, this afternoon, and also to wish yourself, Michelle, Henry and Agnes the merriest of Christmases. May the golfing gods treat you favourably throughout 2026 with respect to your continued search for whole iron shots and mastery of the game. I look forward to convening with you again for some more golfing adventures during 2026. Go easy, my friend.
Likewise, Shane. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, my friend.
Many thanks for tuning in. If you don't currently follow us on socials, you can do so as follows. On X, you can find us at Firm and Fast Golf. On Instagram, Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On Blue Sky, if you're that way inclined, the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On YouTube at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. And indeed finally on Substack at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast, occasional newsletter. We favour to ask, if you're still with us, if you're enjoying the show, you might consider giving us a star rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really would be appreciated. Thanks again for listening.